Welcome back, everyone. This is Toe to Toe Boxing Talk with your man James, of course. And this past weekend, we lost a legend, man. We lost an icon. The boxing world, the sports world lost an icon. We lost George Foreman. This past weekend, George Foreman passed away at the age of 76. And I didn't want to get on right away and make a video talking about his death. In fact, I wanted to process the situation and talk about his life, his career. I wanted to encapsulate everything that he accomplished throughout his career. See, when you talk about George Foreman, you talk about a man that came from one of the roughest neighborhoods in Houston, Texas, the Fifth Ward. A man that had no guidance whatsoever. A man that came from the mud, that got it from the mud. And the day he walked into a boxing gym, he felt at home. He started late. I believe he started at 17, 18 years old. But shortly thereafter, a year, in fact, he's competing for a gold medal in the 1968 Olympics, which was incredible. We will never see anything like that ever again. Let me put this into context for you. Usually amateurs who are competing at the highest level, you need at least 4 years of experience to compete at the Olympics, especially for a gold medal. George Foreman did that in a year. Which is incredible. Nothing short of phenomenal. He wins the gold medal in 1968. Becomes professional, and he's mentored by the late great Sonny Liston, who is one of the most intimidating, frightening fighters of all time. So George Foreman looked at Sonny Liston and was like, you know what? I'm going to act just like that. You know, I don't want to be approachable. I want people to fear me. You know, he copied his demeanor, his mannerisms, and became Big George Foreman. Before his, infamous fight with Joe Frazier, he had great wins over George Chuvalo, Gregorio Peralta. Basically steamrolled everybody. Now, the fight with Joe Frazier, he was an underdog. Joe Frazier was the first man to defeat Muhammad Ali. Joe Frazier has the greatest left hook of all time, bar none. And George Foreman steamrolled Joe Frazier, knocking him down 6 times, which led to the famous line by Howard Cosell, "Down goes Frazier, down goes Frazier." Yeah, that came from that fight. The way George Foreman would stare at his opponents, it's like he was seeing through them. He was that intimidating. He wins the heavyweight championship off of Joe Frazier. He winds up beating Ken Norton in 2 rounds. I mean, incredible. Like, these are guys, Ken Norton and Joe Frazier, these are guys that gave Muhammad Ali hell, that defeated Muhammad Ali. And George Foreman walked right through them in less than 5 rounds. Incredible. But as they say, what goes up must come down. George Foreman was 25 years old and felt invincible. Against Muhammad Ali, the Rumble in the Jungle in Zaire, everyone thought that Ali was gonna lose. Everyone thought that Muhammad Ali was gonna lose, was gonna die. People feared for his life. They feared for his well-being. But Muhammad Ali is one of the greatest boxers of all time. But not only that, he's one of the smartest boxers of all time. He knew that, the rope-a-dope tactic would tire George Foreman out. And he ultimately knocked him out in the 8th round because George Foreman was gassed. George Foreman was laying on the canvas like, what the hell just happened? Ali defeated him physically, mentally, and emotionally. There was no coming back from that. Foreman was lost. He was psyched out. He resorted to fighting 5 guys in one night, which was a joke. And was basically at a crossroads in his career. But what really, defined Foreman's career was that Ron Lyle fight. Now, I urge everyone out there, please YouTube Ron Lyle versus George Foreman. I promise you, that's one of the greatest fights you will ever see in your life. Hands down. One of the greatest fights you would ever see in your life. It's rock'em sock'em robots. I mean, George Foreman, Ron Lyle, Foreman's knocking Lyle down, Lyle's knocking Foreman down. They're taking turns knocking each other down until finally Foreman knocked out Ron Lyle and Lyle stayed on the ground. That was a career-defining fight for George Foreman. You look at that and you're like, wow, this dude really has heart. He really has character. And he has the intangible, something you can't see or touch. Is that it factor. Foreman had it. He would go on to lose a nip and tuck fight against Jimmy Young, in which he stated that he went into the locker room, collapsed, and had a religious awakening. Decided to retire from boxing for 10 years. In that 10-year period, he became a pastor, helped out his local church out there in Houston, Texas. But when the church needed money, he decided to, go back into the boxing gym and do what he does, what he knew best, fight. George Foreman, a lot of people didn't take him serious. A lot of people thought that it was a joke. He's too old. He's too fat. He's not going to accomplish anything, blah, blah, blah. But George Foreman has something up his sleeve. George Foreman defeated Dwight Muhammad Qawi. He then defeated Jerry Cooney, which ultimately led to a title shot against Evander Holyfield. He would give Holyfield a great fight, but would lose. He gained everyone's respect that night against Holyfield. He would fight again for the heavyweight championship against Tommy Morrison, but then lose. Everyone thought it was over. Everyone thought that his career was over. He's 45 years old. He's washed. But then came the fight against Michael Moorer, which going into that fight, he was an underdog, which he was 21 years prior against Joe Frazier. For 9 rounds, Moorer is schooling him. He's hitting him at will. But then it happened. As the great Jim Lampley would say, it happened. Foreman landed that right hand, that 1-2, bang. Moorer's on the canvas, staring at the lights. And Foreman is kneeling in his corner, praying to God and thanking him for the opportunity, because he became the oldest heavyweight champion of all time. It's an inspiration story. It's something that you can look at and say to yourself, like, wow, if he can do it, I can do anything. I put my mind to it. Foreman would retire at the age of 48 in 97 and became a pretty good commentator for HBO. I love this back and forth banter with him and Larry Merchant. They will always go at it. Became an astute businessman with his Foreman grill. Everyone and their mama had a Foreman grill. I had a Foreman grill. Those Foreman grills came through clutch, I must say. He had other business ventures that he was successful at. But all in all, George Foreman, a legend, icon of the sport, and he's an icon in pop culture as well. When you mention George Foreman, you mention everyone. You know, you mentioned the Ali's, you mentioned, you know, the Frazier's, the Sonny Listons, you mentioned the Floyd Patterson, Tyson's. You mentioned all the greats. He's up there. He's actually one of my favorite heavyweights of all time, and one of the hardest punchers of all time. Him and the late great Ernie Shavers. You know, two of the greatest punchers of all time, in my opinion. 1A, 1B. But Foreman was more than that, man. He was a symbol of hope. A symbol for, you know, if you put your mind to it and forget the doubters out there, you can accomplish anything. And that's what he did. So I want to send my prayers and condolences to his family, friends, and loved ones. Foreman was loved throughout the whole community, man, and he would definitely be missed. So rest in peace, George Foreman. We love you. We miss you. And thank you for the memories.